Well, hey there. How you doing today? Hopefully well. I'm sitting here in a tiny house I'm building, so forgive the echo because there's nothing in here yet. But I just finished my workday and I wanted to sit down and have a discussion about fruit flies. No, not fruit flies. Uh, about several different topics, and I'm hoping I can cover things. This is all based on some thoughts that I have a hard time explaining and defining. Some things you might call Zen, not in the sense of Zen as a practice, not to get into that, it's not really a practice, but Zen as in the term as it's used to things that are indescribable. There are ineffable is another term that you may use. Things that you just cannot convey to other people, that you can express to other people very easily with words. And we know language falls short on the most important things that we want to talk about. It's just the way it is. And anybody who's done even the slightest delving into philosophy or psychedelics or the psyche in general will find that it's very easy to get really wrapped up in the what ifs, the maybes, and the kind of attitude we have about what's true and what's not, and whether it even matters. So combining the rational and the mystical, I guess, as far as using any two terms that come off the top of my head, that would be basically the central theme of how I try to live my life. The things that make us happy in life, the things that make us fulfilled, rather, because happiness is a fleeting emotion, the things that make us feel more fulfilled overall in our lives, I believe, are experiences and connections. Now, a lot of people say, for example, like, it's all about love. Let me say that. I've heard that a lot. And I used, at one time that was kind of my philosophy, for lack of a better one. Well, maybe everything just is about love. It seems to be the emotion that really people strive towards. But after talking with enough people, I heard some pretty good arguments that love, or rather connection to other people, I guess, is what I mean, isn't as essential as people may think it is. There are people who can go off and live on their own in the woods. Purpose is really what I should have been using, the term all along. And purpose can be a relationship. It can be someone else. It can be, for example, having a family and just living a normal life. And so I find myself wanting to have purpose in that way, which I'm fortunate to have an amazing wife and 3 amazing boys. And it's been tough. It's been hard to raise kids. It's been hard to hang up what my wife and I could be traveling the world, right? I mean, I'm not saying that that's something that we, oh damn, we had kids, but rather if we didn't, we might have more freedom to travel. The thing is, I wouldn't change what I have for anything. And on a side note here, but relating to the topic, a podcast I was listening to, Chris Williamson, he had this lady on who had written a book about, she's I think a psychiatrist or a doctor, I don't remember exactly, but she's writing a book about kids who grew up with single parents, or rather children without fathers, was much of the discussion, and how much hate and feedback she gets, and resistance from the people who are, quote, the anti-natalist crowd. And they actually have to start pro-natal rallies to get people to have kids because, the population is dropping. This is not necessarily the main point here, but rather because society has convinced people that they'll be happier if they don't have kids, and when they're asked why, they say, well, then I have more time for myself and my career. And I step back and I really think about that. That's a great point. But why self? You see? Because the discoveries I've made in my life, when you move away from the work, the purpose in making money, whatever it may be, raising your children, taking care of your friends, your family, nurturing relationships, fostering friendships, it's a lot of work. And a lot of people just want to back away from it all. But if you want to be a happy person, okay, a good person in your own mind. I mean, happy is relative, so is good. But in general, I'm going by the average person who feels a certain way, depending on their moods, depending on their circumstance, but in general, doesn't want to harm other people. And most people, I feel, are that way. And so when I move from my rational side to my mystical side, that's when I realized that the purpose, when it pertains to work, career, whatever it may be, is really not that important. Not to me anyway. It's not about what you do. It's about whether you get satisfaction, but it's also about the other things you do in your life. Career is not everything, you see. In other words, if you have a job you don't like, but you've managed to raise amazing kids, good for you. You've done pretty much what any human could do. If there's any life purpose whatsoever, it is what you make it. But if you do have kids, you're doing what people have been doing for millions of years, right? Well, since we've been people. But neither here nor there, as I always say. I don't know why I use that term only when I'm talking on YouTube, but it's all irrelevant, neither here nor there, really. But it's all relevant at the same time. So we want to have a career, we want to be established, we want to feel like we have purpose in life. That's great. What about the mystical side? So moving from the rational to the mystical. I've had some pretty amazing experiences, and honestly, psychedelics have led me there many of the times, at least initially. And I always knew that advocating for psychedelics in the past, I knew that one day I'd be vindicated. People would be like, "Oh, those things are horrible." They'll send you into a psychotic episode. I've seen this firsthand. I've seen somebody go into psychosis from psychedelic-induced psychosis, but it doesn't mean that everyone's going to react that way, and it doesn't mean that there's no benefit. It's like saying, well, people overdose on opiates, so there's no benefit. Of course, we know that's not true. In the right dose for the right person, it's phenomenal. And psychedelics themselves have shown me some experiences that I really cannot define. And it brings me back to the ineffable. But there's this inherent feeling that I always obtain during a psychedelic experience. That feeling is one of connectedness, not just to myself, which is first and foremost, you have to be connected with yourself. That is an amazing experience to have. But feeling connected to those around you, realizing family and friends are what's really important, and then having that same story reinforced every time you take a psychedelic like that. But it's not just people. It reminds you that you're connected to everything, to the ether. And I had an experience the other day that was, whoops, dropped my glasses. I'm just checking to make sure that the camera is still recording. I had an experience the other day where I was kind of reminded of this. The fact that every day I'm reminded that life is fleeting. I wake up and think about time I've wasted, things I haven't done, things I have done. But ultimately trying to just live my life the best I can, not just for myself, but for those I love. Because I want to make life easier for those around me. And every single time I have a psychedelic experience, it reminds me of those connections. But this particular one, I feel like I passed into a place I hadn't been in a long time. And if you're a psychonaut as well, you know that place. It's the place where there's utter chaos in your mind because you've perhaps taken too much. And then all of a sudden, all of that chaos subsides and you enter into this space. And no, I'm not talking about DMT, but any psychedelic, any situation, it just depends. Laying down with your eyes closed, some mellow music on headphones, maybe some Special K, and go into a frame of mind that reminds you that things are much deeper and more complex than our brains can comprehend. That just because you may be blasted out of your mind, In this world, you can't function, but there is a point where you move from this world to another place. It may be a place deep in your mind, it may be a root of the psyche, but it's a place that many people would call the tunnel or heaven or the afterlife. It could be this is why near-death experiences are compared to psychedelic experiences. This is also why psychedelic experiences can reinvigorate a person's motivation for many things in life, but also a near-death experience. It's not just that a person almost died, that they have these newfound discoveries where they want to go out and do all these things in life and feel like a new person. Often the near-death experience, they weren't even conscious. They were having this experience in their subconscious. Sure, it could be endogenous dimethyltryptamine related, which is your DMT that your brain produces. It could be that you have not just an endocannabinoid system in your body that makes cannabinoids, but perhaps an endo-psychedelic system that's way beyond what we can even discover. The point is that this is something that's rooted with humans for a long time. Psychedelic substances, and when they are consumed in proper doses, in a proper setting, they can be revelatory. And with so many people lost, it's hard to talk about because I don't want to recommend these things for people who they may not work for. But as far as finding purpose, finding connection, and just reminding ourselves that everyone matters and we still matter, because let's face it, people are very self-critical. I beat myself up all the time. I'm far from arrogant, but I can put on a front when I need to because I do have confidence. And there's a big difference between arrogance and confidence. If somebody pisses me off, says something I don't agree with, I have no problem speaking up. I don't mind losing connections over me speaking how I truly feel, if it's important. But that comes down to tact and, being responsible with the things you say and making sure that you're not just saying something to be a dick, which we all do at times too, or at least a lot of guys do. But anyway, acknowledging that we're just human, we're doing our best, not beating ourselves up or other people. And a psychedelic journey can have a very long-lived experience that can remind you of this day to day, that it's okay to have emotions, it's okay to get mad, it's okay to be sad. But instead of Americans being introduced to these things back in the 60s and 70s, as they should have been, a lot of people just considered that, well, if you do that stuff, you'll jump off a building, and so I'm going to go to the doctor and I'm going to get what the doctor gives me. It's much safer. And then we have a whole generation of people taking antidepressants, which, hey, no offense. I mean, if it works for a person, that's great. But anything I need to take for 3 weeks and then continue taking to have any effect, I'm much better off with 1 or 2 psychedelic experiences a year that just boost me back up to that point where I remember. It reminds me of what matters. But it's not that psychedelics aren't necessary. They're just a pathway. They're a tool, one of many tools. It's not about what you know. It's not about what you think you know. I think most of us figure this out at one time or another. There's a lot of pompous people out there who really think that they have, quote, the truth. Let them have it. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter unless it's affecting your truth, and generally it's not. So we all just got to live together, be the best people we can, for whatever that means, and stop overthinking shit and just be fucking normal people. And yes, normal is a thing. It's the way people feel in their hearts to act. We're not being normal. We all know if you post a certain comment or a text or a response to somebody and you feel weird about it, that just didn't feel right. It's because the internet allows people to be anonymous. And I only bring that into it because I think it's really crucial that we start living lives as if everyone we're talking to online, we're speaking to them as we would in person. And I think that'll give us a much better perspective on how people truly feel, instead of just feeding the trolls that are just insecure and want to argue with people for no particular reason. If I argue, it's because I disagree with someone on a topic, and I'm well suited to defend myself on that topic. But generally, I find myself not caring more and more about topics, and that's dangerous too. Because ultimately, we're here to talk about things, to be human. If there's any purpose to being a human whatsoever, Let me know what it is. Leave a comment. Tell me, what is the purpose of being a human? Because it is the question I've wrestled with for a long time. I feel like the other night I finally had that answered, but I'm going to keep that one in my heart. And yeah, it's pretty crazy shit, the things that we discover, the ineffable, the Zen. Anyway, I'll see y'all next time. Peace out, and I'm going home now from work. Peace.